Happy Saturday morning. Catherine is here and I have a very cool conversation. We need to get the Facebook thing right. I know Facebook now lets you bring in friends onto a conversation. That's what I'm going to try to do today. I want to bring on my friend Tom. He is amazing. I want to share his message with all of you because in this day and age, we need to have more people talking about what's going on, right? Particularly right now, there is grief all around us. We're losing people, right? The conversation around COVID is everywhere. And if you know someone who's lost somebody to COVID, drop that in the messages. Let me know that so that we can pray for you. We can work. We are gonna bring in Tom. It says we're adding, and if my internet holds up, this is gonna be amazing. So it says it's adding him. So let me tell you about Tom. There he is. Hi, Tom. So this is exciting. This is the first time we've done this.
Yeah.
Yes. So I was just going to tell what I know about you. There it is. There it is. But somehow you figured it out. It's amazing. So it's great. And Matt Beck is here. This is amazing. So I want to introduce you guys to Tom. And the reason why is because, you know, he and I share a similar mission. We want to get people talking about grief. We want to get people talking about death because the reality is it happens to all of us, right? We're all experiencing grief, you know, even right now, just grief about because we can't go out and see our friends because we can't go to the places where we want to go, right? I have a sister and brother-in-law who lost everything in a fire. So they're grieving the fact that they don't have the things that are so precious to them, right? We're grieving that we can't see each other. There's so much. And then again, there is, Tom and I were just talking about this the other day, is that there are something like 3 million people a year who die. And so grief and death is all around us. It's not usually the happiest subject, so we all kind of just avoid it. But the problem with that, as Tom will share, is that if you avoid it, eventually it's going to come back and kick you in the ass and it's going to beat the crap out of you, which is why I've titled this the Beat the Crap Out of You. So I want to share, first of all, you got to go to goodgrievings.com. That is where he's created his blog, his site. And I love what it says on there. He says, express, don't suppress. And he says he shares his journey through grief so that you can embrace yours. And then he has this amazing t-shirt that says the only way out is through. So he and I are in exact alignment on what we believe, which is amazing. So I kind of say, Tom, that you're like the male version of me. So
I'm sorry,
why don't you share with everybody a little bit about who you are, how you got to goodgrievings.com?
This is awesome, actually, by the way. And I'm sorry if I'm lagging a little bit, but I have to do it on the phone because it didn't come up on the computer. So
maybe it's a technology thing. We'll figure it out. It's getting better and better. It is.
Bear with me if it's lagging. So we met 3-4 months ago online somehow. Basically, I've been doing Good Grievings for about 4 years now. Took me a while to get it going because I was, you know, the fear and all the anxiety and everything of talking about grief and not knowing what's out there because I wasn't aware of how much grief is actually talked about because it's everywhere. Right. Especially with what we do, like through Twitter, and like Twitter was the first thing that I started on with posting with my blog and rebranding my blog, and just wanted to share my story and share like the grief.
So you've lost multiple people, right? You've lost multiple people, not just one.
Yeah.
Share maybe who you've lost.
I would say since 94, so 27 years now. I've lost about 16 people, 16, 17. I would say family and friends. In that is included in my mother, my sister, my father just recently in last year, in April. father-in-law who I was really close to, god sister who passed away of breast cancer, and then one of my wife's uncles who I was really close to also, he passed away in 2016 also. So it's been a whirlwind, and it took me a long time to actually realize what grief was after my mom died. Because I mean, you know, in the 90s I was still in high school, and everybody loses. Grandparents are, I guess it's the normal back then, which is I thought it was normal that, you know, you lose your grandparents when you're younger, right? But that's not normal nowadays. People lose their grandparents when they're older. So didn't know what grief was until my mom passed. And you know, we were talking the other day, and that vivid picture that I mentioned to you about me just not realizing what I was dealing with, and the distractions that comes up with everything, and you don't want to deal with it. You don't want to. You want to suppress it. You don't want to face it. You don't want to face the fact that your loved one's not here. You know, denial is like this. Probably for me, one of the strongest stages I went through, because I was like, I don't want to. I'm 18. Why would I want to, you know, accept that my mom's not here? So.
Right. Well, talk a little bit about, you know, so basically, you know, I titled this, right? We were struggling to come up with a title, and it's like, well, grief the crap out of you, because I mean, I think that's what you experienced, you know, even in your first loss, right? At 18, that, you know, talk about how, you know, it took you to, you know, down to 5 days on the couch. I mean, it beat the crap out of you.
Yeah. Yeah, it sure did. Kind of like sucker punched me. So when my mom passed away in 2000, you know, like I said, you don't know what to expect, and you know, I became my mom. My father was just, you know, my mom did everything, and
Oh no, are we losing you? Come back to us. I'm not sure. I think I'm still here. I'm hoping. Tell me if you can hear us still. If you're watching, drop in the comments that you can hear me so that I am not talking to myself. Good morning, everybody who's here. So Tom was just sharing his story about losing his mom, and how, you know, he was surprised how much grief takes over, and how it's much more than, you know, just a, you know, an emotional process, right? That it's a physical process, that it drains the energy. Thank you, Sarah, for telling me you can hear me. Yeah, Tom's frozen. Okay, so hopefully, I don't know, he might jump off, jump back on, but hopefully we'll just keep going. But you know, what we were talking about and what he brought up was how much, you know, he was in denial, and not purposefully in denial. He didn't know. And I think that that's what happens to a lot of us. I know it happened to me too. And Deb, I'm sure you can probably say the same thing. Like, you don't necessarily understand the magnitude of what grief does to you, and what grief is after losing somebody, until it smacks you in the face, right? And that's why I said it beats the crap out of you, because all of a sudden, you know, you're like, why am I not better yet? And why am I so tired, right? So one of the things that we always talk about, you know, or I talk about with my clients, is that, let me see if he's trying to join again. Here we go. I'm gonna bring Tom back on. You know, but one of the things that we talk about is that grief. There he is. Hey.
technology, 2021. You thought it would be a little
It's
bit
all
better.
good. You know what? It's all good. It's such an important conversation that we will just keep going. So go ahead. You were jump right back in while we have you, and share more of, we were talking about sort of how grief beat the crap out of you, you know, early on, because you didn't expect it, right? You didn't know what was going to happen when you lost your mom suddenly, and you know, you didn't know what was going to.
Yeah, I like so many, like, what do you do? Like, you know, I became my mom, like I was saying. My dad was just struggling. My sister she's 2.5 years younger than me, so 15 when my mom passed away. And I kind of like stepped into that role and just took everything, took care of the house, took care of my dad. My dad had been retired at the time, so, you know, he worked part-time, and he just, you know, struggled, and then his health deteriorated, and distractions in work, and not realizing that I have to deal with grief myself and stop taking care of other people because
we do that a lot.
Yeah, and being so empathetic and just me as what I know myself as now, and I was back then, more aware of it now, I should say, was just who I am. So I would say about 4 years into dealing with my mom, I finally just, my dad had been in a rehabilitation center for some surgery that he had to unfortunately take care of that left him in a wheelchair. So I just crashed. I hit rock bottom, and I was on the couch with anxiety, just had no energy left, and it got the best of me. And I didn't know what to do, and I don't even remember if I reached out to anybody or in the beginning, but I think I just, like, something just clicked, and maybe it was my mom just smacked me upside my head spiritually and said, hey, get off, you got a whole life to live, and
well, and I think that that moment is so important, right? I think that, we all, when grief strikes in our lives, no matter who it is, right? And I'm talking about the kind of grief that like knocks you off your feet, right? And lands you on your couch, right? I think we all have stories of being on the couch and not being sure whether or not we can get up, or being sure whether or not we even want to get up, right? And so I think there's that moment where there's a decision that needs to be made. And are you going to keep going? Are you going to fight? Or are you going to let this grief consume me? Did you have a similar experience like that?
I mean, anybody does, because any day life, like, you wake up in the morning and you're like, oh my God, I don't want to get up today, but you have to, so you just keep going. So, you can easily let it consume you. It's just with anything, but grief particularly, because it just wears your body down. Like I see it firsthand with my father. Like he didn't do any counseling. He tried, he said it didn't work, and he just was so far in depth with grief and just in a black hole that it got the best of him. And I 100% feel that the grief was a part of his passing. Yeah, he didn't die from COVID or anything like that. It was actually, he died from sepsis, but it definitely played a role in his functionability, his clear thought, his always frustration, always quick to anger, quick to snap back, just like his way or no way. And I can go down the rabbit hole, but and there was that time when I was just like, you know what, I can't change him. I tried, But yeah, going back to what I was dealing with, and that day, I just, it almost felt like, and as you were talking, it was like it felt like someone just took like a hockey stick and just took my feet out from underneath me. I was just laid out, like, and I didn't want to do anything because I was working so much and dealing with my dad. Like my dad was in the rehab facility, which happened to be, I shouldn't say rehab facility, it was really a nursing home because of insurance purposes. My mom had all that and didn't. I went there every day for a year after work. So not taking care of myself. Every day for a year after he had his surgery and finally got into a rehab. I went to see him every day he was in there exactly a year. And I went there every day for a year. So that kind of was the nail in the coffin for me, and just say, I need to take care of myself. So EAP, Employee Assistance Program, and I mentioned this in the video, the interview I did on the radio a couple weeks ago. A lot of companies offer it, and a lot like counseling. It's anything, banking, so on and so forth. But I reached out through the company I'm with now, and you get sessions for free to talk to counselors. Like, they can refer you out, and they can refer you out to other people. Like, and so this is how I all started doing my counseling, which I wrote about a couple of times on my blog. I wouldn't be the person I am now without that counseling. Obviously, the other self work that I've done, but
it's interesting though. I mean, I love that you bring up the employee assistance program, because a lot of companies have that. So you can just look on your company website if you don't even want to ask somebody, but usually your HR team will know about it, right? So you can ask about that. And like Tom said, you get it for free. A lot of people don't want to make that first step, right? So you have your insurance card if you have insurance, right? You can call your insurance company and say, look, I need somebody to talk to. How do I do this? And they will point you in the right direction. You just have to make that first step. And I know that some people, I mean, I have been in therapy. I was in therapy before my losses. And I mean, I am a lifer, right? I just love therapy. I love personal development. I believe that it's the key to all happiness. Learning about who you are and why you do the things you are and why you feel the way you feel. So I'm so glad. I'm so glad that you bring that up. But talk a little bit more about, we were talking during our conversation about how, it really, all of these people that you've lost, and then your dad is sick. So now you're potentially like thinking about his eventual demise, right? Which doesn't, you're kind of starting, they call that anticipatory grief, right? Where you're starting to grieve him, but then you're also going there, right? You're probably working at the same time, right? You have a family. So like life didn't slow down for you.
Oh no, and it goes back to and I think you call it, what do you call it? Situational emotion or vivid picture of how I can picture myself that way.
Mm-hmm.
That's like, yeah, I've been down, but never that far because I know what that feeling's like, and I know, okay, I need help. Okay, and a prime example, this past week I went back to my counselor and I was like, okay, I need help because I'm not feeling myself, and it was one of those things like I kicked myself in the ass for not continuing going and being consistent with that because I was like, I would tell myself I don't want to go to counseling for the rest of my life, but maybe I need to, you know. And there's nothing wrong with that, and if I tell people that don't know me that I say that and they look at me, I'm just like, I don't care, like,
Right.
I know it's me, right? So doing stuff like this, writing my blog, the videos, lives, and the interview I did a couple weeks ago, sharing things, like, it keeps me going, keeps me alive, and like, I don't want my two girls and my wife to see me, you know, like that. So I need to be proactive. And I live my life like that in general, just being proactive with things.
Well, which is so, I mean, it's so good, right? And sometimes, I always find it amazing that we will do things for the people that we love more so than we will for ourselves, right? That, we'll get help because there's other people around.
Yeah.
But tell me a little bit, because it's got to be different. I know my experience, right? As a woman, as a female, as a mother, but is suggesting therapy and all the guys that you talk to, I mean, are guys even less willing to maybe reach out to a therapist, or is that not true?
That's what I'm here for. I don't break that. I want to break that stereotype because men. I mean, it's evident if you haven't dealt with grief, you're gonna eventually. It's just a part of life. But men, I think it's the. I'm a man. I can't. I don't cry. That's a bunch of BS. You have emotions, like, you're human, you know. Um, but every man has a sensitive side, whether you think they do or not, and some just don't show it because they're like, oh man, I'm not going to do that. But it is 2021, man. We have to rise up from that crap and take care of yourself, because the amount of mental illness that comes from grief can be avoided. And I'm living proof of that. Not saying that I was anywhere near where my mental capacity was. It could have went way south if I hadn't dealt with the crap that I had to deal with. But the amount of grief that can lead to other things, it's so like, not that it's frustrating, but it's so like, and it's not easy, but it's easy because we have each other. Okay, we have our similar but yet different stories, like I mentioned to you the other day. Grief is so much intertwined. It's so like, it's the same thing but different people. It's different with each person, but it's still the same thing, right? I can lose my mom, you can lose your mom 20 years from now, and I can still feel how you feel, even though it's not the same.
Right.
So I'm still learning how to just, it's like, break that stereotype. and it's a daily focus. I'll get there eventually.
Yeah. Well, we all will, right? I mean, I think it's an ongoing. I think it's an ongoing journey, and we continue to learn out of it. And there's growing through grief, right? That when the hardest things happen in our lives, right? Grief being one of them, right? It's an opportunity to learn. It's an opportunity to grow and to struggles. If you believe in what Rumi says, that light enters where the wound is, or if I'm messing up the phrase, but right. Oh, light. No, the wound is the place where light enters. But you were talking earlier, and I think you made a really good distinction that I want to point out, because I'm like, it's kind of like an aha for me, right? Because there's another quote that says, grief is not a mental illness, right? It's not a disease or a sign of weakness, right? It's the price that we pay for love. That's an Earl Groman quote, and I didn't do it quite as eloquently as he does. But so grieving in and of itself is not an illness. But if you do not deal with it, if you do not avoid it, it will come back and bite you, and it will turn into things like depression, anxiety, right? You mentioned like quick to snap, right? Have sort of heightened anger much more easily, like all of those things. Like, do you agree with that, right?
100%. And I don't know what it is, but this morning I was fine when I woke up, and I had a trigger for something, and I was just like, I was an ass.
Right.
10 minutes. And then I was like, what's going on? Like, I caught myself.
Mm-hmm.
See, those things I would have 5 years ago, I would have never realized what the heck it was.
Right.
But you know what? And I see, and what I also think, the other thing I think about grief is people feel they get guilty for themselves because, and I've done it. I'm like, okay, my dad's not here, but I'm not grieving him. I don't miss him. Right? Like, I miss him, but I'm not thinking about him. So then I get guilty. Like, why am I not? Because it's only been 10 months. But you know what? That's natural. That's all like a part of it, you know? And you just have to live your day. Like, my dad's always with me, and I'm very like, and I wrote about this on my blog too. I'm very, my intuition is really strong, and I have a heightened sense of the spirit world, and for the longest time I didn't want to admit that because it's like, oh, this guy, he can talk to dead. I can't talk to dead.
He's all woohoo.
But I hear my dad like talk to me, like, and I don't, and that's what it's one of the things that like, eventually I'm gonna have to let that go because I consume a lot of people's energy, and it takes a lot of energy out of me. But I got off my point what I was trying to say. But what was your question? I'm sorry. Did you ask me a question?
Well, I was talking about how grief unrealized, right? If you're in avoidance of your grief, that it turns into other problems. Like, it doesn't go away. Like, so you have to deal with it. Like you said on your shirt, the only way out is through. Yeah. That if you just ignore it, it just festers, and eventually it comes out. And that can be a lot of ways. Yeah.
My next shirt is express, don't suppress.
Oh, good.
There's too much of that going on. But
I mean, it's like I had a good stint at drinking, right? I was avoiding with some alcohol. Heck yeah. I used some over-the-counter medications just to kind of, Benadryl works. I mean, not good long-term strategy, right? Like,
well,
to deal with it.
Yeah, and that was some of my downfalls in the beginning, which I thought would cover things up, and it made it 10 times worse. So that's another thing, like, in the back of my head, like, I know what works for me now and what doesn't. And like you said, like, I don't have the time to sit there and sulk, and like, yeah, I could be upset, and it triggers me, and I get triggered I get triggered almost every day. But it just reminds me, like, okay, I'm here. My dad lived his life. I'm living my life now, and he's seeing me live my life the way I wanted him to now, right? And and I see it through my girls, and I see it with my wife, and like, it's full circle, and the amount of like awareness, and that's my word and I wanted to get into that later, but awareness is my word for the year, because I'm so aware of what's around me and what. It was hard for me to make quick decisions when you're going through grief. That's another aspect that you think you're just so in a fog that you can't even think straight. And the more that you talk about it, and that's what we're here for, the more you talk about it and get it off your chest. I mean, just the one little thing that you could hold on to can just relieve so much tension off of you. And it's just amazing. I mean, it happened to me the other day, so um, it's definitely not a mental illness. It's a part of life. It's a part of who we are. That's already there preparing us. And once it happens, you're like, what the hell is this? And then you just have to figure it out.
Yeah. And, and I deal with a lot of women who are, they get really, you can get stuck in grief. And, I deal with women who have lost, infants or babies or miscarriages. And part of the challenge that they have is they feel like, and I've heard this many, many times, and I even, thought this too. It's like, if you give up some of the pain that you're feeling over time as you're processing grief, that somehow you're giving up, like you're forgetting them, or you didn't love them as much, that you have to hang on to the pain because otherwise you're going to, you don't love them. And people worry that the love that they have for those people is just going to somehow dissipate and disappear. That hasn't happened for you, clearly, with your dad.
No, not at all. And even my mom, like, and to be honest with you, like, it's a really strange feeling with my sister, though, really strange. And I don't understand why, but one day I want to find out why. The ache and the heartache of loss of my sister was tragic, but I don't have a, like, it sounds bad, but I don't have the heartache I do as I thought I would. I miss her tremendously.
How close in age were you guys?
Almost 3 years, a little bit under 3 years,
Okay.
And I think it plays a more of a role now when my kids are born, because now she would have spoiled the hell out of them. You know what I mean?
Yes.
So it's little things like that like trigger it, but I've accepted her death, I guess. Maybe that's what it is. I don't know. But like, it's just all raw because it all came back up in last April when my dad died. Like,
right.
I knew that time was coming, but you're never prepared. As much as you can think you can prepare, not prepared at all.
Yeah. Well, and again, I mean, I think that's really good messaging. Like, you might as well deal with it now, because when the next person in your life dies, right, it brings all that back up, and it's almost, I don't know if you would say it's additive. If you haven't processed, if you haven't dealt.
Yeah, like, and another example to that was, like, my mom died. It'll be 21 years. February 10th, February 17th, it'll be 21 years. And
wow.
For the longest time, I was like, when is this going to go away? And granted, that 4 of those years, I didn't take care of myself, right? So after that, I learned to go through the process and realize what it was. And then, boom, my sister dies in 2009. It'll be what, 12 years now in June. And there it goes. It happened all over again. Just when I was finally like, okay, my mom's not here, my sister died. So it's like, okay, well, I don't accept anything now. It's just what it was. And now my dad died, so it brought up everything again. But you live and you learn through it, And unfortunately, this was, and I've done a reading with a friend of mine, someone I worked with, and my life purpose was for this. Like, everybody's life is, I believe, is planned for them, and this was my plan. This was planned for me to be this way, to be this good, talk grief, and the people that have passed away in my life have led me to do this.
Right.
And there's a lot of people that don't believe that, but there's no other reasoning why I'm doing this now, and have lost so many people. There's no other, like, what other reasoning could it be? And I don't question it anymore because I've gained that clarity.
Right.
So.
Well, and I have a similar experience. I mean, when I lost my son, right, the first thing you go is like, why? Like, why does this happen? First of all, why do you die? Right? Well, how can a God, if you believe in God, how can a God let it happen? And then, to say, well, the bigger thing is, why did this happen to me? And for me, my biggest struggle, in grieving was trying to figure out, like, what the hell? Like, what does this all mean? And so, there's a few things that I've come up with, but I think you're right. I think that's led me to the compulsion that I have, right? I mean, I never planned to do this, right? I never planned to be in 2021 10 years after my son died, hanging out with you on Facebook, right? Doing a live like this, talking about grief and death, right? And in the same vein, being happier than I ever thought that I could be. And so I personally believe that, my loss was really, the first book that I wrote is The Gifts of Grief, right? Losing my son Jackson was a gift in that it made me who I am. And it basically picked me up and put me on a different path. Like my life was on one path and it just picked me up and put me somewhere else. And I fought it for a while. And then eventually, like when you're on the path that you're supposed to be on, you have to just find a way to embrace it. But there's so many things I want to talk to people. I want to talk with you because I know you've done things to help you get through your grief, right? We talked about going to see a therapist. You're doing your blog, you're writing about it, you're talking about it and helping other people, right? It's helping you through your process and sharing your story. What do you recommend for other people, somebody who may be watching here saying, okay, well, I'm definitely like, I hear what you're saying, but I'm not really sure, like, what do I do? What would your advice to them be?
Trust your gut. That's the first thing, because it's never, and I say that because I do it, but if like you're going through grief now, and you're foggy and you can't think straight and you don't know what the next step is. I mean, we have content. You and I have content, so that'd be the first step. Mm-hmm. If that's not feasible for anybody, reach out to a family member, because 9 times out of 10, if someone's passed away, and they're in your family or they're a friend, someone else is going to know that person, so you guys can lean on each other. Mm-hmm. And then there's the therapy. Now, that comes lightly because therapy is not for everybody. Firsthand, I mentioned it to my dad 3 times, and he tried it and he's like, that's not for me. I'm like, okay, well, I give up.
Well, there's a stigma, I think, and I'm hoping that stigma is kind of going away as time moves on. But yeah, and then and in the same vein, I've been putting together, and I'm actually working on my second book, which I'm calling it like a grief manual, a mother's guide to getting through the grief process, where I really want to put together, for me personally, I needed to be very active. I know, when I had my son and he was 6 weeks old, and this is my after my loss, I leave him to go back to work, and I was having daily panic attacks. Like just thinking about leave him would invoke a very strong, severe panic attack. And so that's what propelled me, because I'm like, okay, I can't avoid this anymore. Like I have to do something, because I literally could not leave him. I could not go to work. I'm like, if I can't go to work, I can't make money. We're going to lose our house. We're going to lose everything. Like that was all on me. And, so I am putting together, sort of things that you can do for somebody who maybe doesn't, I'm a very strong advocate for therapy. I've been in therapy a long time, but for somebody who wants to do something to move forward and to continue to explore their grief, I have Grief Inspired is built on 3 pillars, and the 3 pillars are: you need to understand your relationship with your grief, you need to understand your relationship of your grief to yourself, and then you need to understand your relationship of your grief and what happened now with the rest of the world, because it fundamentally changes who you are, how your perspective of the world, how you view things. So that's what I'm trying to do, to sort of, I like to try to put a box around things and say, how can we explore this area, this area, this area, just to continue, like you're just trying to move forward. And I think that's the thing. And if you get stuck, if you're one of the people watching and you're stuck because you just can't let go of the anger, or like one of my most popular videos on my YouTube channel is like about guilt, because people get stuck in guilt and they don't know how to move through guilt. That's when you reach out and you ask for help, for sure.
I think that will. You can get stuck in guilt so quickly, and I was like, I caught, I was actually the day before, it happened the day before one of my counseling sessions, and I was like, the guilt, and you're like, you can't be guilty because you're not grieving your dad every single day. It's just not possible. You can still have him in your heart, but if you're working, I mean, how are you going to do 5 things at once and be like, oh yeah, my dad's not here? Like, not like it's not a time for it, but you're going to sit there and I'm going to grieve my dad for the rest of my life. Like,
Right.
I still, 21 years later, like, so the only way out is through. I mean, it comes back to that. It's 100%, you know. And another thing, going back to like what you asked about, like what can someone do that's watching or will watch this, is meditation. And I know we touched on this a little bit, and I thought about it a lot because I wrote it down, and it's not so much being consistent, but just doing it daily. And I'm grateful for that comment that you gave me, because it takes less pressure.
Yes.
Like, less pressure. I'm like, oh my God, got to be consistent. It's just like, well, just do it daily. Like, it could be 5 minutes, you know?
Yes,
So
and I have to say, I'm not taking credit for that. So I learned that from the course that I'm in with Danelle Delgado. So this is the shout out to Danelle. Yeah, and she talks about being daily, not consistent. Yes.
well, I'll give the shout out for you through her. How about that?
Okay, good. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Yes. So one of the things that she has that I've sort of implemented myself is she has, and actually there's a new one just about to come out, so I'll have to buy the new one, but she has a gratitude journal that she calls I Choose Joy. And it's big. I should have it here, but it's in the other room. But it's basically starting each day, and this is daily, 10 things that you're grateful for. 10 things that you're grateful for, 3 things that you want to accomplish in the day, and then being consistent on your growth, right? How are you learning about whatever it is that's important to you, right? In this scenario, how are you moving through your grief, right? You need to learn about your grief, right? It's an education, because you need to have hope that you can be happy again, right? And it's an education. And so I encourage, like, read the blogs that Tom has, right? Like you're saying, that's education. Going to YouTube and listening to my videos or somebody else's videos, or, you know, following us on Facebook. Those are all things that will help your learning and help move you through grief.
Absolutely. I wanted to ask you, and I know we talked on this the other day, and I think it was a part of your Demel's class.
Mm-hmm.
The 3 words that you chose.
Yes.
To focus on.
Yeah, so we did a thing this past week that was, you know, talking about, oh, there, Diana. Yes, gratitude, growth, and goals. That's what Danelle talks about. And then she adds grace to it as well. That's the new one. Because you got to give yourself grace, particularly when you're grieving, right? So then you can say grieving, gratitude, growth, and goals, and grace. That's a lot of G's. But what we did this past week was saying, you know, how are we showing up in the world, right? If I am going to help people through the grief process, I need to show up consistently, and I need to, you know, brand what I'm doing, essentially. And so it's looking at your core and saying, what are the 3 words within your core that embody who you are as a person, right? And mine are, you know, they can change over time. Mine have developed to what I'm going to share now based on everything that I've been through. And if you look at all my posts, and if you look at any of the live videos that I do, anything that I write about, these 3 words are embodied in it. And it is, the first one is hope. That you have to have hope. You have to see somebody else who's gone through the grief process that's similar to yours, who's come out on the other side, so that you know that you can get through it. So I want to give people that hope. And I want to remind myself daily, right, that there's hope for me too. Like, it can continue to get better. It doesn't, you know, it doesn't ever stop. And then the second one is I want to help. You mentioned how empathetic you are, right? I've never really coined myself as being an empath, but maybe I am, right? And it's when there's nothing that makes me crazier as a person when I see someone hurting and I can't help them.
Yeah.
That drives me crazy. I want to help. And so with the grief process, I'm like, man, if somebody had told me some of this stuff, right? If somebody, you know, the example that I share is, you know, you think during the early grief process that you start to feel better. And you're like, oh my gosh, like, I'm through this. And then something happens and this wave of grief comes crashing you back and knocks you right off your feet again. And you're like, what the hell was that? Right? That's grief beating the crap out of you. And so I want to help people with that. I want to let people know, like, this is the stuff you need to know to get through the grief process. So I want to help with that education. And then finally, my last one is happiness, right? The talk around all of this is we all just want to be happy, and things happen in our lives and we can't stop the things from happening. We can't stop COVID. Maybe the vaccine will help, right? But when it started happening, like, you can't always stop it. You have to deal with what is, right? You can't stop the fact that your mom left you when you were 18, right? Or, or all the people that you've lost. You can't change that. So you have to figure out how to deal with that. And the goal should be like, I want to feel happy again. I want to feel good. And you deserve to be happy, right? You don't need to be stuck and be miserable. So those are my 3 words: hope, help, and happiness. So thank you for asking me about those.
And ever since our conversation a couple of days ago, I was thinking of mine, and I was like, I have to ask this question. So now I can think of 3 words.
Okay.
So you're the one, right? Awareness.
Yes.
Because I need to be aware of what's going on in the world, not only just for myself, but just for my kids, right? Awareness of the grief that I'm dealing with, like awareness of the constant, like, mood changes you can get. That's another part of grief.
Mm-hmm.
What the triggers are, like, they're always going to come at you, and then you have to realize them, and just, like, that's another part of, like, learning through this process of grief. Like, you're going to have triggers, whether it's now or 10 years or 5 years, or you're going to have triggers. I still have triggers with my mom. February's
right.
Always used to sulk in February, like, oh, February's coming. My mom's birthday is February 10th. She passed away on February 17th. I would always, like, get in this group, and I'm just like, you know what, this is enough. Like, let me prepare, and let me be happy this month and celebrate the good times and the stuff that she's taught me, that I just went and started doing without even knowing that I was doing them. Balancing a checkbook at 19 years old. Like, who the hell does that? Like, especially, back then.
Right.
So,
awareness.
So awareness is 1. Joy is 2. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
It goes along with being happy, but you can be happy and not be joyful. You can be joyful. So I want to be joyful, and I want to spread light on grief, and I guess one of the biggest messages of this conversation we're having is that there is a light at the end of the tunnel, and you can get through it, and
right.
You can remember the love, the good times, the happy times, the funny times, the silly times, the stupid things that you talked about with your parent who passed, or whatever, your friend. Think of those times, and it makes the grief a little bit lighter. Like, I sit back now and I laugh about the times that my dad just, like, hung up on me because I just pissed him off, because I kept, like, trying to change. And I look back at it now, I'm like, what the hell was I doing? Like, why? It wasn't gonna do anything, but that was the father-son relationship that we had. Like,
right.
My dad wasn't the type to go in the backyard and play catch with me. He was work and come home and just do what he did. Wasn't ever that type. So I broke that stereotype, because I'm opposite of what that was. So my last one is caring. Sometimes I care too much, but that's just me, and
right.
I'm not going to change that, because then it changes who I am. So awareness, joy, and caring, I think, are going to be the 2 other words that I'm going to focus on, since I've been on the awareness track since New Year's.
Nice.
So
yes.
Shout out to you for making me think about the 2 other words.
Thank you. Yeah, no, good stuff. Again, I mean, the course that I'm in, she's pushing me every single month. And, and that's something, I mean, I believe in constant growth. I believe in constant learning. I just, I don't think you ever stop, so pick up a book, find something to read, find something to watch about anything, right?
Yep.
And just keep learning, because I think that's where you find your joy, and that's where you find your happiness, I think.
Absolutely. And I did want to mention too, I follow another person on Instagram, and I found a post that she shared, I don't know how long ago it was, and she's at the handle at Grief and Grits, and I have it. I'm gonna have it here, and it says, and a lot of people are like skeptical, say, oh, you know, they don't want to bring up the memory, you know, say, oh, I'm
Right.
sorry for your loss, like, I'm sorry that this happened to you. I'm sorry about your dad. They don't want to mention it, but
Right.
this post says, ask me about my person who died. I know you worry you'll remind me, but I always remember when you ask, my heart feels cared for.
Oh,
So
that's
I'll
beautiful.
talk about anybody who's passed away in my life, no matter
Mm-hmm.
if it was yesterday or whatever. I am the type of person to just reminisce in general. So if
Right.
it's about someone who's passed, especially my dad, I'll do it. So the first 21 days after he passed away, I posted a single picture of him or something silly that he was doing. And I made light of it because every single picture that I posted, and you can go back and see in April, or I'm even excited in April now when it comes up because I can do it again because it's in my
Right.
memory. He either had no shirt on with like jeans, or he was in a gray cutoff shirt with red shorts on.
That's awesome.
That was probably the best 3 weeks of him not being with me anymore. I've had just me dealing with the grief of the loss of my father. So don't be so hard on yourself if you're listening to this. Don't be so hard on yourself. You will get through. You have plenty of support, more than you ever think, whether you know us or not. I've met people we've never met in person, right, Catherine?
Right.
And have like a handful of people that I'm connected with that I've never met, and it's like we've known each other for years.
Right.
So you have plenty of support. You just have to reach out.
Yeah, and that's really good because I'm sure there's some people that may be watching that are thinking to themselves, okay, I haven't lost somebody, but I want to help, but I don't know what to do. And I think you're exactly right. People purposefully stay quiet because they don't want to add to your pain. But I think you're giving good advice in that, no, ask them about the person, and you can say, would you like to talk about, like, I'd love to hear about, tell me a little bit about them, or what do you remember about them? And and you as the griever, you can say, like, look, I'm not ready, I can't talk about it. But I think that most people would love the opportunity to talk about the person that they loved, and it's more painful when people ignore that a death has happened, that a loss has happened. They just kind of step away, and you find out who your friends are real quick.
1,000%.
Yeah, you find out real quick. And and again, it's not to fault anyone. I mean, it's scary. And Brene Brown, I follow her. I love that woman. She is like the one person, if you could meet, have lunch with her, she would be my person. Like, I love this woman. If you don't know her, follow her. But what she says is, it's about sitting with a person in their pain. Like, you don't have to do anything. If you want to help somebody, just sit with them while they're in pain and just be there. Like, all you have to do is show up. You don't even have to say anything necessarily. And it's allowing your own discomfort to lean in and help someone else, to show that you care. And it's uncomfortable as
Yeah.
really uncomfortable. Like, sometimes it's even uncomfortable for me, and I like pride myself on, like, that's what I do and that's who I am because I want to help. But I want to encourage people to try to lean into that discomfort, and the person that you're helping and that you're showing that you care about will be forever grateful. I mean, like you said, I have people who were my sister. My sister is a pediatrician in Virginia Beach. And she, everybody heard my story because my son was in the NICU, and then he died. And then, and then later I got pregnant again, and I have my current son, and they followed my whole story. And when Jackson died, they sent me some of, like, the most amazing, they sent me gifts. They sent me cards that were just heartfelt. And I didn't know these people. I still haven't met some of these people. I'm friends with them all now on Facebook, and hopefully some of them are watching. But Joy Bolander, Elaine Kitchen, I don't even know these people. I haven't met them, but they impacted me so deeply because they just showed up and they cared. So I think that there's something to that.
Yeah. And to shine light on your comment about showing up even with this, what's going on now, there's plenty of ways to connect without showing up in person. So
Right.
There's no excuses. I'm the one. I mean, I'll give you the biggest hug if you want to. I don't care. But
Right, exactly.
we have this here, or if it's someone that you're close with and they want to meet in person, then meet in person. Like, we gotta live our lives. Like, at the end of the day.
Well, and we can spend all day long being upset that we can't physically hug people because of this or whatever. Or you can pick up the phone and you can call and you can FaceTime or you can Skype or you can Zoom or you can Teams or you can WebEx or there's, Google Hangout, right? There's so many, and it's, Google Hangout is free. So, there's really no excuse.
Nope.
So, and if you need help, ask. I'll help you.
Have to ask you because we don't, unless we know that person, we're never going to say, hey, do you need help? You have to ask. And
right.
That's how we've gotten to where we're at now because we've asked. We've sought the help, and we continue to because you can't grow unless you face your fear. Grief is a fear that no one wants to face. I understand that, but you have to face your fears. You have to. The fear, as much fear that's out there right now, you just have to look it straight head on the face and just go with what your gut instinct tells you.
Yes.
And if you can't understand what your gut's telling you, then meditate
right.
and it'll go a long way.
Mm-hmm. So tell people where they can find you, where they can follow you. Anybody who's watching, anywhere where, especially we know men, right? If women are watching, men who maybe are grieving. Now Tom is here. He is a resource, right? So you can just send them to Tom. Where can they find you, Tom?
Good grievings across the board. Gmail, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. I have a YouTube. I haven't used it much, but there's a video up there. I've interviewed another friend who's a male who lost his mom. That's up there. But Gmail, you can email me, Gmail, goodgrievings@gmail.
Yep.
But it's pretty easily accessible. So
right. So don't be shy about reaching out. Share him out. What he's doing is amazing. I'm so glad that I know you and I can call you friend, and I think it's just really, really cool.
Absolutely. I'm grateful for our conversations, and we'll have to definitely do this again.
Yes, I think that I feel something brewing. So I think it's good. I think it's
just have to get better at the title. So the next one's on me. I'll have to come up with one.
Okay. That's great. Well, thank you again. Thank you everybody for watching. We are here. Reach out to us. I'm so happy that we were able to do this. And it's Saturday, right? So hopefully you're not working. Go out, have some fun, hug the people that you know, that you can, that you love. Give them a shout out if you can't hug them, and just be grateful for the day and for what is.
Thank you so much, Captain. This was a blast, and I look forward to talking to you soon.
All right. Take care, everybody.
Bye-bye.